Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol. When you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything. Flap, 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 flap. Um, yeah, welcome back, Internet. It is I, StarScream, the ruler of the galaxy. I'm sure you all know me by now. Very familiar with my work. I've been doing this thing of like singing when I start my show. I have no formula to this show. That's the problem. I need to like set a parameter, do it once a week so that everybody knows or something. Tune in next week. I kind of do that, but I'm too organic for structure. You can't put me in a box. Yeah. So, a needle pulling thread, a note to follow, so. Tea, a drink with jam and bread, and that brings us back to do, la, ti, do. Okay, I have 2 questions. I think I could handle more than 2 questions, but that's okay. 2 is good enough. I've gotten used to 2 or 3 questions at a time. And they're simple, and I'm not surprised. They're about Transformers again. And that's okay. You could ask me anything. You could ask me how stars are created in nebuluses. You could ask me, the the future of the human race went up against fake liberal socialism and tech collusion and Chinese billionaires and Saudi billionaires taking over the world and Google censoring everybody, and the internet's going to shut down. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, I have my first question. Comes from Dank Starscream. And he says, what do you think of the other Transformers shows or universes beyond G1? I think, goes without saying, there's other things other than G1. And he says, I'd like you to talk about the stuff that you know rather than what you don't know very well. And if you can, try to compare those things to G1. And he says it may piss off other people who are hardcore fans, but he says, I'm curious to hear your expansive opinions about the rest of the franchise. Well, that's an easy question. Short form, it went on too long. Basically, I wrote here, that the TV shows went on too long. The movies went on too long. You can tell a Transformers story in no less than 2 movies. In fact, I storyboarded it. 2 Transformers movies, maybe 3. And, my opinion is that things really got ugly back in the day when the American company pulled away from the Japanese animators. And, the Japanese animators were so desperate to keep the show going, hoping someone would pick it up because the Americans told them there were no more international broadcast. And they continued with shows like Headmasters until they ran out of money and declared bankruptcy. And Super God Master Force. and then when they ran out of money, the Americans were like, whoa, we'll buy it back from you. We'll buy back the royalties to things like Optimus Prime and Transformers and all these names. And then they came out with Beast Wars and nonsense like Armada. A show like Armada is so bad, okay, and things really went downhill. I didn't like Beast Wars. I didn't like Cybertron. I didn't like anything that came after the original animated show, which had a lot of continuity problems in it. I'll give you the example of Armada, okay? The show Armada, which is hard to watch, it's almost unwatchable. It's very kiddie, and it plays out like a video game, okay? There's like these MacGuffins, there's like these secret crystal things, and they have to collect them, and get some kind of superpower, and it's like a video game. Collect all 6, and then you get the thing that makes everything powerful or something. And then the Decepticons can't win, so they destroy it, and it's just it's simple, and it plays out even worse than one episode of the original G1 show would have had a better premise than the entire armada. So it was really bad, but that's what the American companies do. They make it really simple. They make it so simple that you'd wish that the Japanese animators were still making the show because they're better at it. Supposedly, although there's all kinds of continuity problems throughout television, and it didn't stop with Michael Bay. Michael Bay was the same thing. It was the same. I would say that the Michael Bay movies weren't actually that much different from G1. They're the same kind of problems, the same kind of nonsense. Well, Michael Bay put out a rather incompetent series of movies. The thing you can blame him for is for being stupid, for being incompetent. You can't really blame him for making a Transformers movie because it was very similar to everything that Hasbro's been pumping out for years. It's nonsense. It's hard to watch. And it doesn't go anywhere, okay? The proper story of Transformers is 2 movies. I mean, I storyboarded it. I know what I'm talking about. It's a story from beginning to end, and you're never going to get that from television, okay? You think about so many TV shows that have never had an ending. They'll come up with a beginning. I mean, take something like Spider-Man, okay? There was a first issue of Spider-Man when he got bit by a radioactive spider. And then everything after that is just Spider-Man facing different problems every single time. It's just some new thing, And it's silly, and it never ends, okay? Spider-Man, if I wrote Spider-Man, he would get squashed like a bug, okay? There would be death. There would be the great veil, the great curtain closing. There would be something Shakespearean. What did I write? I wrote, they were trying to make shows like Beast Wars, and I hated Beast Wars. It was so dumb. I mean, it was silly 3D animation, and I'm not very good at 3D animation, but I would know when my work isn't good enough to put on TV. I would know that when it looks clunky and ridiculous, and there's time travel. I will say this. I wanted to mention that there were a lot of comic book and fan art illustrations that did persist over the years that were really well done. There's a lot of really good animators and drawers and illustrators out there, fine artists. There's a lot of them out there, and they deserve a lot of credit. Certainly a lot more than Michael Bay. I mean, look at that guy. Could you imagine that he makes a movie like Bad Boys 2, where they're just like smashing up all. There's this scene at the end of it where there's a car hitch trailer thing, and it's just dropping all these vehicles, and they're smashing on the road, and everybody's just shooting at each other everywhere. And somebody looked at that movie and they said, "Hey, let's make more of that." So I'd also like to mention, I'd like to meet Michael Bay. I'd like to talk to him about the process of making a Transformers movie. I'd like to talk to him about his influences and where his mind was at when he was making those movies, and ultimately how to fix the problem, which would be to make my movies happen. And these days the big media companies, they don't make organic shows. They're pushing empire-destroying propaganda that historically unprecedented social conditioning. Oh my God. And your God too. And they're I've lost my place from what I was writing. I was writing something about how TV is so bad. They never have any ending to their shows. They just end. Like the He-Man show. They get to some point where he's doing something with the Snake Men. There's something going on, and then all of a sudden the show just ends for no reason at all. It's just done. No more of that. And, a proper story deserves an ending, and that's why people are so obsessed with these shows. They want an ending. They want a proper story with meaning and message and value, A proper Transformers story, should be about how the people of Earth eventually need to learn something. And what they need to learn is that they don't want this planet Earth to end up like a cold, dead, dark planet of Cybertron. That's the meaning, you know? Anyway, I went on about, I wrote in here something about how, you know, TVs have this flicker rate that's creating zombies, and it was designed by CIA people in the 70s. They had rooms full of rhesus monkeys, and they would tie them down to a chair and make them watch TV screens. Then they would change the flicker rate of the TV to see if it could make the monkeys react. Woohoo! Anyways, I'm moving on from this question. I mean, you're kind of asking me to compare the different versions. I consider there to be two versions of Transformers. The long, expansive thing, which is full of continuity problems and the 7 stories of animation. And then there's this thing that I based my storyboards off of. And that is some really crucial, early on, developmental idea about robots from a planet that come to Earth, a message in a bottle from Cybertron, and that story was happening very, very early on. And people point to G1 and they say, well, it's the most amazing thing in the world. Well, it really wasn't the most amazing thing in the world. It was pretty good. But what was good about it was that there was a humble beginning, and that never came to an end. And you can compare it to 100 shows and comic books, and unless they have a beginning and an end, there's nothing more than this sort of emptiness of thought. You never get anywhere, you never learn anything, you never achieve anything out of all the effort that goes into these shows. You just end up retarding the brain with flicker rate. But I don't know, hopefully that answers your questions. I would be clear to say that I've seen thousands and thousands of hours of television, okay? And I've seen thousands and thousands of movies. I have a film historical knowledge, okay? I have a regular historical knowledge. I know most things about everything that's happened on planet Earth. Anyway, moving on, I have a second question from Chris Pilot. And Chris on Facebook, he says, what would StarScream do if after his coronation there was no Galvatron to blow him up? So he's talking about the movie when Megatron turned into Leonard Nimoy and blew up StarScream. I think they really needed to give Leonard Nimoy something to do, something really grand to do, because, and you know, StarScream was the most grand thing that he could have done, was to face off with StarScream. And this is really because StarScream was the only character that required a background from the TV show. You know, if you imagine watching the animated movie and you'd never seen the TV show, that movie on its own, you could basically derive that there are these robots and they're facing off with each other, and there's good robots and bad robots and all of that. But StarScream was a character who was trying to take over the Decepticons, and you sort of needed to know that. I mean, you sort of don't, but I mean, it made it more powerful when Galvatron showed up and blasted StarScream, right? Well, I guess if you wanted to, I would also say that the writers and creators of the show were in more defiance of proper storytelling than StarScream was in defiance of Megatron. But anyways, I ramble. What was I going to say? I was going to say that you know, if I had been the ruler of the Decepticons, if it was me, and there was no Galvatron, you know, they couldn't contract Leonard Nimoy, and they just killed Megatron just like they killed Optimus Prime, and all the other Autobots were being eaten by Unicron. I think if I was in charge of the Decepticons, I would basically carry on ruling the galaxy as I've always been doing. I don't know if you knew this, but I am the ruler of the galaxy. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, I am. And you know, it's a simple question. I mean, what would you do if you were in charge of the Decepticons and the Autobots were gone? You know, you'd take over the planet Earth. See if you could do a better job than Hitler. Anyway, I might even use the sword of He-Man. He doesn't mind. I can take his stuff, you know. I could take his crown.
No, my crown. Mine. My sword. No. No.
You wouldn't stop me. You know, I think that answers your question. At least I hope it does. I am StarScream, the ruler of the galaxy. Maybe I should say something. I think that, you know, if people want me to continue answering questions, then, you know, continue asking me questions, and I will answer your questions. I'll do a pretty good job anyway. I sometimes rush these things, but I will continue. I will, for your sake. If you ask me a question, I will answer it. You know, as long as your question isn't too, you know, hurtful or harmful to a certain degree. And I find these things contradicted. You know, I got into some arguments today about censorship, and it kind of bugs me. I mean, censorship is the kind of thing that the bottom line is about what you're teaching children, okay? If you're a grown adult, then there shouldn't be any words that hurt you, okay? Words tend to affect children the most because they're trying to learn, and you need to cradle their ability to learn slowly into a position where the things that they're learning make sense and they can use it. If you start throwing really awful things or confusing things towards kids, then you have the worst kind of problem. And certainly things that are lewd can really harm children. And, you know, if you ask me questions that are gross, that are lewd, that are awful, and I think that, you know, it's not something that I would want to teach to necessarily anyone who would be watching, then I'm not going to answer that question. That kind of thing. But ultimately, I hate censorship. Like, I'm really mad at people who are into censorship. You have no idea. You have no idea how angry I am about censorship. But I don't know, I'm rambling at this point in time. Yeah, give me something to do. Maybe I'll review a show or something, you know, like the new Netflix She-Ra show. I'll give you a hint, it sucks. And no, I won't review that show because I can't watch it. It's garbage. It's tranny vision. It's basically confusing and sexualizing children, which is exactly what I just said about lewd stuff. So I don't know, maybe I contradict myself, but anyways, and it's not like you can't allow your kids to watch certain things. You should let your kids watch things, but you need to guide them. If you're an adult and you have kids, you need to help them to understand the meaning of what they're watching. And hopefully they learn something that's beneficial. You know, if they're not learning anything, then why are they watching it? You know, that's all I'm saying. But, you know, can't really stop. Kids will eventually learn everything and they'll become adults. Think about how many things you watched before you became, you know, as smart as you are. And I know everything, so imagine what I've seen. Anyways, I don't know how to end this. You know, I don't know how to finish. It's like I need a catchphrase or something. Maybe I should sing my way out or something at this point. My throat's a little tired. Need some water. Well, I guess that's about it. I've rambled well long enough. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you want more, then ask me more questions and I will answer you. And if you want to engage me in some way, then, you know, let me know what you want and I'll see what I can do for you. Until the next time, I'm StarScream, ruler of the galaxy, and you are the internet. Ask me anything, internet, and I will answer you.